believe it or not, Congress says it has a solution to the partial shutdown and get money that it owes to TSA. Do you believe that? What's their solution? What is it? And what will it take to get there? And the most important question of all, when? As we've been reporting for the past 38 days, TSA agents are still working around the clock, keeping your plane safe from harm, all while getting stiffed by Congress. That news and more. Markwayne Mullin is now the former U.S. Senator from Oklahoma. Just a short time ago, he was sworn in as Secretary of Homeland Security. His department, DHS, oversees TSA. Earlier, Secretary Mullin spoke at the White House.
These employees have been there for 30 days without pay. And if you need anything to know their dedication to show up and still protect the homeland that you and I enjoy and the freedoms that we're experiencing, they're working for free.
Meanwhile, the runway at one of America's busiest airports is still an active crash scene. Federal investigators are still on the scene, and they have news, though, today about the jet collision with the fire truck that left 2 pilots dead and dozens of passengers injured. Also had the preventable murder of a young college student in Chicago. The suspect is an illegal migrant from Venezuela. Is Chicago, as a sanctuary city, to blame? And guess who's coming to town? Will President Trump roll out the red carpet? But first, the destruction in Tel Aviv continues. Senior correspondent John Huddy is live in Tel Aviv, where it is 10:01 p.m. John?
Yeah, and Greta, about an hour ago, air sirens went off once again, warning about incoming Iranian ballistic missiles. And we saw actually over the Tel Aviv skyline in the distance as we were heading into a shelter, what was clearly cluster munitions. Once again, the Iranians using these cluster bombs loaded into warheads, anywhere from 25 to 50 of these basically 4 kilogram, which is about 9-pound bombs that can disperse over an area of about 5 miles. We've seen the damage, we've seen the destruction, and also the death that can be caused. And once again, some of these cluster bombs hit the religious community of Bnei Brak, which is just northeast of central Tel Aviv. We were there last week, Greta, when a cluster bomb hit a building in that same area, and once again, they came under attack. We understand that 7 people were wounded, including a baby. We don't know the extent of their injuries as we await more information from Israeli officials about that. But also Newsmax confirming today that it was a missile carrying a 100-kilogram warhead. So that's about a 220-pound warhead that impacted a residential area in central Tel Aviv this morning. Initially, Greta, there were reports from the IDF and Israel National Police that it was possibly another type of a cluster munition, another variant of a cluster munition that landed, but the IDF later clarifying to me that it was in fact a smaller but still very dangerous Iranian missile that had slipped through Israel's air defenses and landed right around 7:30 this morning. No one, incredibly enough, was killed, only some minor injuries because people went, as they do and as they're expected to, into the bomb shelters. But the missile, as we saw, caused extensive damage in the neighborhood to the buildings and also surrounding buildings in that area. It was one of at least 6 missile barrages directed at Israel today, the first one starting around 3:15 in the morning, and now with this latest, probably more than 7 at this point. And this latest attack, both today and tonight, Greta, comes after the direct hits of 2 Iranian ballistic missiles in the southern Israeli cities of Arad and Dimona on Saturday, injuring nearly 200 people, about 11 people seriously wounded. And then Sunday, as I reported, a cluster bomb landed also here in Tel Aviv, and then another one in Ashkelon, which is a city south of Tel Aviv as well. So the bottom line, the news of a potential deal, Greta, between the U.S. and Iran to try to end this war and the ongoing military operation has been greeted, as I said last night, with cautious optimism. Although I should also add, Greta, that Israelis have a pretty healthy dose of skepticism when it comes to this. And today and tonight is a pretty good reason why. Greta?
John, back here in the United States, the president is quoted as saying that this war has been won. When you hear that and when you look around and see these cluster bombs, you know what's going on. You talk to people in Tel Aviv and around Israel. What comes to mind?
Well, what comes to mind and what people understand is that Iran's military capabilities have been severely degraded. The latest number that I got from the IDF just this week is that 70%, more than 70% now, of their ballistic missile launching capabilities have been either destroyed or severely degraded. Their missile arsenal also has been degraded. They believe that the number is probably less than 1,000 at this point, and more so, that they don't have the ability to manufacture new missiles. So clearly, as far as the military operation, both the United States and Israel have absolutely degraded the IRGC's command and control structure, and as I said, their military capabilities. But that said, IDF officials have told me that Israel still has thousands of targets in Iran, and IDF officials that I've been talking to and my sources have told me they don't expect this operation to end anytime soon. Now, this was before the latest developments from President Trump and these talks, according to the president, between the U.S. and Iran. But my sources have told me they expect this to continue on, and that may be so from Israel's military perspective. But again, we'll see how that plays out in the coming days.
We only have about 15 or 20 seconds. Is Iran saying that there is a discussion going on?
Well, you know, we're hearing the bluster, the usual bluster and rhetoric from Iranian officials, including the Speaker of the Parliament, who's been said to be the point person for an Iranian delegation. And that may be strategic because they don't want to get killed or because they're keeping their cards close to them. But we haven't heard directly yet from any Iranian officials that there are talks that are ongoing. There's just basically scattered reports about that, so that remains to be seen. But what we are hearing from the president is that they are talking and they want to make a deal. So we'll see. We'll see how that,
John Huddy,
as I said, we'll see how that plays out.
John Huddy in Tel Aviv, thank you. Back to Capitol Hill. Republicans say it is worse than Watergate. What's worse? The Arctic Frost investigation. In 2022, that investigation was launched by the FBI and the DOJ under former President Biden. It began as an investigation into an alleged 2020 election conspiracy to keep Trump in office. But later it was exposed that the investigation targeted hundreds of Republicans and groups. The targets included at least 8 Republican members of Congress. How were they targeted? Well, unbeknownst to them, their phone records were secretly subpoenaed. Here's what Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz said earlier today at a hearing on Capitol Hill.
I'll tell you one of the big differences of Watergate versus Arctic Frost. When Richard Nixon and his corrupt attorney general and his corrupt administration abused their law enforcement powers to go after their political opponents, Republican senators stood up to the president of their own party and defended the rule of law. Watergate was about a handful of files in a single office. This reached into tens of thousands of private communications, emails, records, and personal data, toll records, bank records, donor lists, law firm records, and other personal files relating to every major conservative organization were subpoenaed.
After President Trump was reelected in 2024, the Justice Department ended the Arctic Frost investigation. Coming up, an update from the National Transportation Safety Board on the deadly crash at New York's LaGuardia Airport. We have the very latest when the record continues.
All across the nation.
So we heard a lot about Gaza recently. We're going to head down there, check it out. We're going to be doing our show right here from Minneapolis.
People can't stop talking.
I agree mostly with a guy from Newsmax. We're not all bad dudes.
About Carl Higbie.
Oh, yeah? What are you going to do? Will you come check it out of my ham? I'm going to eat half this plate during the break. Maybe I'll call the ICE hotline. I don't know if I'll have enough time.
And Frontline. For the big news they need to know. Watch Carl Higbie. Frontline.
48% of Americans aren't getting enough magnesium, which is essential for nerve, bone, and muscle health. I recommend Cunol High Absorption Magnesium Glycinate. It's gentle on the stomach and helps you get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Here's Chris Cunahan with the Leaf Filter Gutter Report.
From blizzards to downpours to windstorms or heat waves, no matter where you live, Leaf Filter keeps your gutters clog-free year-round. Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
Mike Capel here, Patriot Software's founder. I started my entrepreneurial journey selling greeting cards door to door when I was 10. At age 16, I had workers' comp insurance for my employees. Some kids were good at sports, but I was a business geek kind of a kid. While other kids were making home runs, I was making money. That's when I learned about capitalism and free enterprise. My fifth successful business, Patriot Software, helps entrepreneurs build their businesses and keep their money. For affordable accounting and payroll, go to patriotsoftware.com.
Kibble. It's been the standard for decades, and it's failing our dogs. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It's gently air-dried, locking in the nutrients and the flavor dogs go wild for. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
The Reverend George Whitfield has arrived from England to awaken the colonies.
My friends, do you want to be free?
We cannot let the sun set on this nation.
A Great Awakening. Rated PG-13.
The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the deadly collision at New York's LaGuardia Airport. On Sunday night, an Air Canada Express regional jet arriving at LaGuardia from Montreal collided on the runway with a fire truck. The Air Canada jet was landing when the runway collision occurred. The two pilots of the commercial jet were killed. 41 of the 72 passengers on board were taken to the hospital. Well, we've now learned the identity of the two pilots who were killed, 30-year-old Antoine Forrest of Quebec and Mackenzie Gunther. No details have been released about Gunther other than his name. Today, NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy said this.
There were two people in the cab, two people in the tower cab at the time of collision, the local controller and the controller in charge. The controller in charge was also doing the duties of the clearance delivery position. That the clearance delivery controller provides pilots with their departure clearance. These two positions were combined into two positions. The midnight shift, as a reminder, is one that we have many times at the NTSB raised concerns about with respect to fatigue. Again, I do not know. We have no indication that was a factor here. Analysis shows that the ASDX system did not alert. ASDX did not generate an alert due to the close proximity of vehicles merging and unmerging near the runway, resulting in the inability to create a track of high confidence.
And today is day 38 of the partial government shutdown. This means TSA agents have been working without pay for 38 days. As you can imagine, many TSA agents have called out of work. Do you blame them? As for airports across the country, travelers are facing hours-long security lines. By the way, this shutdown and the hours-long lines are not only impacting travelers, it's also impacting the NTSB investigators who've been trying to get to LaGuardia to investigate the crash the other night. Yesterday, Homendy said this.
Our air traffic control specialist, who was in line with TSA for 3 hours until we called in Houston to beg to see if we can get her through so we can get her here. So it's been a really big challenge to get the entire team here, and they're still arriving as I speak.
Former NTSB investigator Alan Diehl joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir, and it does not appear, I realize it's early, that this is a mechanical problem. This sounds like human factors, that there's a human error on this. But taking a look at that, I don't understand this local controller versus this controller in charge, the two functions. Who's senior?
Well, a controller in charge would technically be senior, but the person that's got the workload is the so-called local controller, and they're called local controllers because they control local traffic in the airport area when they're airborne, and of course the runways, and they assist with the taxiways also. But it sounds like Greta, it sounds like the senior controller would step in when he saw the local controller, the guy working the trucks and the aircraft, get behind on certain things. There are a couple of other problems going on while all this was going on. You probably heard about them.
No, go ahead, tell me.
Well, there was a United Boeing Max that had aborted takeoff on a different runway, the other runway, the departure runway, and it was back at the ramp, and it had smoke and fumes and odors. And whenever you abort landings, the brakes overheat, as you probably know, and that's probably what they were smelling. But the flight attendants in the back were saying, people are getting sick, we may have to evacuate. And so I think the pilots on the Boeing use the word emergency. Of course, whenever you do that, a controller you get the controller's attention. So he's immediately trying to get the fire trucks and the ambulances over to where the Boeing is parked on the other side of the airport. They have to cross the active runway. In addition, that's the big problem. That's why the trucks are moving. In addition, there's a Frontier airliner that's moving, and the controller did say to him, stop, stop, stop. Frontier, stop, stop, stop. And I'm just wondering if that may not have played into the confusion in the truck driver's mind when he heard stop, stop, stop. Was that for us or was that for the Frontier airliner? I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that's the kind of thing the NTSB is going to have to sort out, and they're going to have to interview, obviously, the two truck drivers who are injured. As you know, they're waiting for their recovery, I guess, to be interviewed. So a lot of questions to be answered, Greta.
Well, there's at these airports, it's so crowded, especially at night. You see they're zooming this way and that way, and you see fuel trucks, and you see all sorts of things moving around on the runways. Having two people in that control tower at an airport like LaGuardia controlling who's coming in and who's crossing a runway, is that considered standard operating?
Well, I think the chairwoman implied that it's not unusual. So I'd have to agree with her. She's looked at a lot more data than I have, at least recently. But we do know there's a tremendous shortage of controllers. People have talked about 3,000 positions that need to be filled. Although it does look like fatigue was probably not a factor. In her interview, she said both the senior controller, the supervisory, and the local controller had simply come on duty shortly before the incident. So it's not like they had been on duty. You know, they're working long hours, 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week. But apparently for these two individuals, they just come on recently, according to the chairwoman.
Is there anything on other transponders? I mean, planes have transponders so they don't run into each other in the air. Are there any transponders on these ground vehicles to notify? I realize the planes are coming in at over 100 miles an hour, but is there any sort of notification, or should there be, to the vehicles that are moving around on the ground?
Well, the chairwoman answered that question about these particular emergency vehicles. They did not have transponders. And yes, Greta, there is technology out there similar to what's installed in the aircraft called traffic collision avoidance systems. But again, she pointed out that at this point she can't unilaterally recommend this. The whole board has to vote on that. But I'm sure that's something that the board is going to be looking at, because there is technology. Now, you do know there's a ground radar in most of these busy airports. So the controllers, if they have time, they're so busy with all their duties, they can look at a radar scope and see where the ground vehicles are on the airport. But the problem, of course, is the fact that controller that night was juggling a lot of balls, and he was trying to keep the system operating. The reason for sending those emergency vehicles across the active runway was to try to prevent injuries if that Boeing crew, United crew, had decided to pop the slides, as they say, and send the people down on the ramp. We all know that people get hurt. And of course, the other big factor, potential big factor, it's up to the NTSB, was the fact that it was drizzle and raining out. So windshield wipers on fire trucks or on the front, the jet was coming in from the right. And I'm not saying they couldn't see the jet. I'm just saying all these things will have to be carefully evaluated. And as you know, if NTSB, where I worked for years, and if anything is meticulous, so we'll know some answers in days and weeks, but it'll be probably the better part of a year at least before the final answer is out and the recommendation about that technology you ask about.
NTSB, I think, is like my favorite government agency because they seem to be so best and get those answers. But it does, I mean, maybe another person if we had more controllers could have been in the tower looking at that ground radar. But that's 20/20 hindsight, you know. But anyway,
well, I have to agree.
Where?
I have to agree with you, Greta. There was only one investigation where I thought the NTSB could have gone further, and it's the JFK Jr. investigation. But that's a topic for another session. They did a good job of documenting what happened. They didn't want to touch the why. I think Ted Kennedy may have gotten involved.
Yeah, well, he was also he had an overpowered aircraft for his experience too. But anyway, Alan Diehl, thank you very much.
Thank you, Greta.
Today, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was on the witness stand, not on Capitol Hill, but in a federal court in Miami. He testified about his interactions with former Miami Congressman David Rivera. In 2022, Rivera and an associate were charged with money laundering and failing to register as foreign agents. The two men allegedly had been awarded a $50 million lobbying contract from former Venezuela dictator Nicolas Maduro. Rivera claims his one-man firm, Inter-American Consulting, was hired by an American subsidiary of Venezuela's state-owned oil company, but not the company itself. Therefore, according to the former congressman, he did not need to register as a foreign agent. According to ABC News, on the witness stand, Rubio said he overlapped with Rivera for 6 years when they both served in the Florida state legislature. Rubio said they were very close while in Tallahassee, and at one point they were roommates. Rubio testified he has no knowledge of Rivera's business dealings in Venezuela. Coming up, is President Trump doing another payback? That when the record continues.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Payback.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
Americans have lost billions of dollars in their retirement accounts in the stock market since 2021.
And inflation is only getting worse.
Patriot Gold Group introduced our no-fee-for-life inflation protection IRA over 9 years ago.
I'm sure glad Eileen and I rolled over our IRAs into gold in 2019.
The only certainty since 2020 is gold. Gold is up over 200% and silver 300%. Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 1-800-778-4156.
Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide. The only firm nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner, home of the no-fee-for-life IRA. Patriot Gold Group is patriots protecting patriots.
Call now. 1-800-778-4156.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Pump up the volume. Go ahead. Crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
During the Omaha Steaks Spring Savings Event, prices are going down. Save up to 50% with entrees about $5 per serving. Order now to get 8 burgers free. This spring, watch the prices fall at omahasteaks.com/TV.
When a cyber thief transfers the title of your home out of your name, it's a race against time to stop the theft of your hard-earned equity.
Many people don't know this has happened until long after it's done.
You as the homeowner think you still own a house. 3 months later, you start getting foreclosure notices and you realize you've got 4 mortgages on your house that you didn't even know existed.
So when's the last time you checked on the title to your home? Find out if you're already a victim at HomeTitleLock.com.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Secretary.
Hey.
Well, it's official. Now, former Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin is the new Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Last night, the Senate confirmed their now former Senate colleague by a vote of 54 to 45. The vote was mostly along party lines. Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul, who has made it no secret that he detests new Secretary Mullin, voted against his confirmation. Last week, Senator Rand Paul feuded with Secretary Mullin in the committee confirmation hearing. Pennsylvania Democrats Senator John Fetterman and New Mexico Democrat Senator Martin Heinrich crossed the political aisle, and they voted to confirm Mullin. After taking the oath of office a short time ago, Secretary Mullin said this.
I don't care what color your state is. I don't care if you're red or you're blue. At the end of the day, my job is to be Secretary of Homeland and to protect everybody the same. And we will do that. I'll fight every single day.
So what happens to the former Oklahoma senator's seat that he has now vacated? Today, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt appointed Energy Executive Alan Armstrong to finish Mullin's term. Armstrong has never served in elected office. There is a caveat to Armstrong's tenure filling Mullin's seat. Under Oklahoma law, Armstrong must agree to not run for a full term this fall. Mullin was up for re-election to a Senate seat this coming November. By the way, already several Republicans have jumped into the race to fill Mullin's now open Senate seat. That includes Oklahoma Congressman Kevin Hern. Hern, by the way, has the endorsement of both President Trump and Senate Majority Leader John Thune. Senate primaries will be held on June 16. The general election, of course, is November 3rd. Politicians, they get this special perk. They can cut security lines at airports. Right now, that is huge since some lines at airports are 3 to 4 hours long. Naturally, people are getting upset with Congress getting this perk since it's their fault the lines are so long for the rest of us. Apparently, like travelers, Delta Airlines is not happy with Congress and its failure to pay TSA and solve the problem with the lines. So guess what Delta is doing? Delta Airlines is saying no more to Congress using specialty services. That means that they can cut the TSA line. In a statement, Delta says, quote, "Next to safety, Delta's #1 priority is taking care of our people and customers, which has become increasingly difficult in the current environment," end quote. So now members of Congress flying Delta will be treated just like you and me. That is, unless Congress can get its act together and fund the DHS. TSA agents have been working with no paycheck, as we've said a lot of times tonight, for 38 days. But do Republicans now have a plan? Yesterday, Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy spoke to Newsmax Kilmany Dukart.
Here's my plan B. Let's don't make any deals. Let's just do the whole damn thing through reconciliation. Let's do a budget for ICE, for Secret Service, for Coast Guard, for FEMA, for TSA. Let's do it all through reconciliation. Now it's going to take, we won't need a single Democratic vote. That's how we passed one big, beautiful bill. We did it with 50 Republican votes and a tiebreaker from Vice President Vance. I think we could do it in 2 weeks, maybe quicker. But I don't know what else to do at this point. Look, our TSA folks and other people who aren't being paid deserve to be paid. Senators are being paid.
We hear the term reconciliation a lot, but what does it mean in a closely divided Senate that doesn't agree on much? And is there a giant problem? Co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics, Tom Bevan, joins me. Tom, what about the idea of reconciliation? I brought it up, or Senator Ted Cruz brought it up last week with me when we had a little heated argument about it. But tell me, reconciliation in this instance, would that be a solution?
It could be, and as the senator just said, they used it to pass the one big beautiful bill. So it's a procedural maneuver that the Senate can do to avoid a filibuster. And as long as the bill is related to budgetary matters, fiscal matters, they are able to pass the legislation. It limits the amount of time that can be spent debating it, and then they can pass it with just a bare majority of senators, 51. And as you know, right now they could afford even a couple of defections and still get this done. And this was something, again, that Thune was sort of not totally enthusiastic about it, but the longer this thing has gone on, the worse it's gotten. It's obviously gaining traction within the Republican caucus.
Well, I don't think it can add to our debt, can it? I mean, there's got another little problem with it. I mean, if it's authorizing all this money to be paid, it might have that little bit of hang up. They got to figure out, they got to do some magic so it doesn't do that.
A little creative accounting. The Senate knows how to do that, I think. You know, the other thing is there's talk that you know, Trump wants to include parts of the SAVE Act in this. That might create some sort of issue if it's not fiscal and budgetary related. So I'd like to see more of the details of how they're going to go about this. But certainly, reconciliation is a tool. That's how Obamacare passed back when they were debating the Affordable Care Act. And it's been used repeatedly. This would not be something that's sort of beyond the pale or out of the ordinary.
Well, Senator said that would probably take maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. I don't know if we can take the stress and the pressure of 2 more weeks in our airline industry. I mean, it's just, these stories of people, 3-4 hours standing in line to get on their planes. I mean, I don't know how much longer people can take this.
Well, I was in that mess this weekend. I was traveling, nearly missed my flight. Carl Cannon, our Washington bureau chief, was in New Orleans. He got to the airport 2 hours ahead of time, and the line was 4 hours. It was out into the parking garage. So, but you mentioned that Delta Airlines maneuver, their announcement that they're going to end this special congressional perk. I mean, that's how this gets done. Stop paying Congress, stop paying these senators, make them stand in these lines just like the rest of us, and watch how fast they're going to work to get this done.
I'm a little angry, though, that thank you to Delta Airlines. I get it, I appreciate it, but I'm a little bit angry that it's we're 38 days into this, and finally some people are starting to do that. I mean, I guess I shouldn't look an ingrate, but it's like in the mouth. But they could have done it 36 days ago. Where's United? Where's America?
Totally agree.
Where are all the other? Where are all the rest of them? And why does it take 2 weeks? And I don't know why it takes 2 weeks to do this, because they could stay up all night. I mean, when there's breaking news, we work around the clock. We don't take holidays, and it's like it's like they don't even care. I mean, they're playing this gamesmanship, and they're blaming each other. Cruz was mad because I said that it's both Republicans and Democrats. Cruz says no, it's just the Democrats. I mean, it's just crazy. Everybody fighting. Meanwhile, the passengers are suffering.
Right. It seems like, and this is why people hate Congress and their approval ratings are so low, is because they come across as playing political games, and they're out of touch with, what's impacting, ordinary people. They're trying to get to weddings and funerals and vacations and all these things that typically, when you're traveling, you're usually looking forward to going somewhere, and to be missing flights and the chaos that's ensued, they do seem very much out of touch. But again, they will respond when you kind of hit them where it hurts. And where it hurts is when you take away some of these privileges that they have, take away their pay, force them to work all night and stay around the clock in the Senate until they get this thing done. And they will respond to that kind of pressure.
I don't know, even lock them in a room and don't feed them. I mean, don't feed them.
I'm all for that too, Greta.
At this point,
That's right.
I mean, I'm turning into a bit of a crank. Every time I hear them say, they would say, I can get the job done, as I want to rewind until right now and say, well, you didn't do too well like right now. This is our third shutdown. But anyway, Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Greta.
President Trump's payback time. Last September, he was wined and dined by King Charles at Windsor Castle. So now it is the president's Trump. It is President Trump's turn. He is rolling out the White House red carpet for the king. According to multiple reports, next month, King Charles III will make his first visit as king to Washington. Besides the White House, on April 27th, the king will address Congress in a joint meeting. That will be the first time a British royal addresses Congress since Queen Elizabeth in 1991. The last time a British official addressed Congress was in 2009. That was former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. This visit from King Charles is in honor of America's 250th birthday. Coming up, why a murder suspect failed to appear in court. That when the record continues.
We age because our cells do. Fatty 15 is the first and only pure C15 supplement, a crucial nutrient that actually reverses aging at the cellular level.
I'm 56 and a half, and I want to feel my best and look my best, and I find this is the one supplement that has helped me get the results I want.
Fatty 15 has over 36 cellular activities that support metabolic, cognitive, liver, red blood cell, and immune health. Give your cells what they've been missing. Use code TV for 15% off your order at fatty15.com.
Parents, America's big birthday is coming up and your kids want an invite to the party. Let them join the fun with the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday, a free guide that helps kids celebrate the epic story of our nation's birth. Send your kids back in time to see our brave founding fathers signing the Declaration and get them ready for this year's massive celebration. Get the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday for free at freeusagift.com. That's freeusagift.com.
One of my most frequently asked questions is, how do you get your teeth so white? And no, it's not the reflection off my white hair. It's Smile Actives. Boom, right there.
Do you have a yo-yo smile? Sometimes yellow, sometimes white. It's a constant battle between everyday stains and whitening treatments. Until now, get Smile Actives, the daily teeth whitening breakthrough that gives you a more youthful smile and helps you keep it.
Smile Actives is easy, and it works. No gloopy trays, no messy strips.
Just add Smile Actives to your favorite toothpaste and watch the magic happen. Our patented Polyclean microfoam lifts away deep stains for a dramatically younger and whiter smile.
You have a choice. You can have those yellow teeth, or you can be full of confidence. I love my white teeth.
Scan, click, or call for your whitest smile yet. And if you order right now, we'll double your whitening free. Get an extra Smile Actives as our free gift to you, but only while supplies last.
And right now, the best part, buy one, get one free.
100% of users saw whiter teeth. Smile Actives lifts away even the toughest stains from coffee, wine, and food, gently restoring your bright, youthful smile. Plus, it's safe for veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I drink coffee every day. Smile Active, it works. Got your boy gleaming.
Clinically shown to brighten your teeth 5 shades whiter in just 7 days.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Act now. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll double your order. Free. But hurry, this deal won't last. Smile Actives is guaranteed to work. Whiten your teeth or get your money back. No questions asked. Don't wait. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. That's free shipping. A free extra bottle. That's an incredible 58% savings.
I think we can all agree, no matter what the occasion, when you leave the house, everyone notices a bright white smile.
Scan the code, go to smileactives.com or call to get your beautiful whiter smile now.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
Well, we're learning more about the preventable murder of a college student. Around 1:30 Thursday morning, Loyola University freshman student Sheridan Gorman was walking with friends near her college campus in Chicago. The students were out at that hour to see the Northern Lights. Authorities say Jose Medina, illegally in this country, approached the students, took out a gun, and opened fire. Gorman was shot in the head and pronounced dead at the scene. Police say the New York native was not an intended target. According to DHS, in 2023, Medina entered the United States illegally. He was apprehended, but then released, made his way to Chicago. DHS says once in Chicago, Medina was arrested for shoplifting, but DHS says because of Chicago's sanctuary policies, he was released from custody on the shoplifting charge. Medina was to appear in court on this charge of shoplifting, but he failed to appear. That's when an arrest warrant was issued for him. Federal officials say Medina should not have been released after his shoplifting arrest. Here's what President Trump said earlier.
The illegal alien monster charged with Sheridan's brutal murder had come illegally from Venezuela and been released into our country by sleepy Joe Biden. He was then arrested and released again by Democrat governor, a real slob of a governor, J.B. Pritzker, in the sanctuary city of Chicago. The Democrats in Congress do not care how much American blood they shed in their demented pursuit of open borders. From Sheridan Gorman to Jocelyn Nungary and Laken Riley, their quest to flood our country with illegal aliens has left countless American victims in its wake. They never change, do they? They see what's happening. They never change. That's what they want. They want to get the votes.
Gorman's family has released a statement. The family says in part, quote, "What Sheridan was doing that night, walking with friends near her campus, was normal, was safe. It's what students do every day. We will not allow this to be dismissed as wrong place, wrong time. This was not random misfortune. This was a violent and preventable act. We are gravely disappointed by the policies and failures that allowed this individual to remain in a position to commit this crime," end quote. Medina, the accused killer, faces several charges, including first-degree murder. Yesterday, he was supposed to appear in court on the charges, but he wasn't there. The Chicago Tribune reports Medina is being treated for tuberculosis. TB, of course, is a bacterial infection spread by coughing. It's rare in this country, but more common in Venezuela. Medina's next hearing is scheduled for Friday, but it's unclear if he will appear in court due to his tuberculosis diagnosis. He will, however, remain in custody. Former Governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, joins me. Nice to see you, sir. Wow. Sanctuary city, Chicago.
None of this should have happened. It wouldn't have happened had there not been sanctuary cities. Wouldn't have happened if we didn't have Governor Pritzker or Brandon Johnson leading our city and our state. It wouldn't happen if the Democrats simply followed the law and helped to enforce the law. And the law is that you can't break into our country illegally. And when you're a criminal who breaks into our country illegally and you've been shoplifting, the law says you should stay in jail until you are tried, or at least give some sort of responsible bond. But in this case, it was basically no bail situation. And this guy went out and did what he did. And the heart-wrenching thing about it is all of us who are parents can appreciate and understand what Sheridan Gorman's family's going through, her mother and father, her sister. I have two young daughters myself. I think about this young girl and think of mine. My daughters have walked along the very beach she was shot and killed at. It's right by Loyola University. And then to dismiss this, as some of the Democrats in Chicago have done by saying she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the Chicago Sun-Times said the same thing with a headline, is insulting and shameful. And this whole thing is a disgrace and an example of what's wrong with the Democratic Party and what's really wrong with Governor Pritzker and Brandon Johnson.
You know who else I'm also angry about in this is the U.S. Supreme Court. They have not yet decided the issue of basically the Supremacy Clause, where the federal law in the Constitution talks about the Supremacy Clause, trumping, not to use that because I can't think of a better word, local law or state law, which in this case, if the federal law says you should be in custody, you should be in custody. But then you've got this conflict in which the federal law can't tell the state people what to do. So there's a conflict. So, it's time for the Supreme Court, well over time, to resolve this issue, to give guidance so that so I don't have to keep reporting on these stories. I don't have to keep hearing about these broken hearts.
Well, you're right, but they shouldn't even have to do that. The governor was elected to keep the people safe. The mayor was elected to keep the people safe. That's the first duty of government, public safety. And you're supposed to be on the side of your citizens and the people who live in your community, not people who come from other countries who are criminals and then kill young girls. And the interesting thing is that it took Pritzker and Brandon Johnson 4 days to actually say anything.
Oh, yeah, what was with that? There was no statement. The rest of us are scandalized. We're reporting breaking news, hearts broken, and you've got the governor of Illinois and the mayor of the city. It's like, there are no-shows.
There are no-shows because that's the new Democratic Party. They're afraid to say anything remotely bad about some illegal immigrant who came to the country who is even a criminal and who kills somebody. That's the new Democratic Party. This Democratic Party is for open borders. They're for sanctuary cities. They're for defund the police. They're for no bail, no cash bail laws. And they're all about endlessly vilifying law enforcement and ICE agents. And as a result, what you get is what this guy just did, because these people feel like they can come here and break our laws and they'll be protected by the Democrats like Pritzker and Johnson.
In some way, it's sort of mixed in with this whole idea of voting, like who's voting and voter ID. More than 70% of the American people think you should show identification if you was voting. On the other hand, if we let people come in, we don't even know who's voting. And of course, if you're coming in illegally and you might see an opportunity, you might want to vote because you want to vote for something that's favorable to you, which might be something that's not favorable to the rest of the people.
Greta, let me let you in on a little secret, which is not a secret. As a former Democratic governor from Chicago, who came up in Chicago politics the same time as Obama, him on the south side of town, me on the north side of town, Democrats cheat at elections. They steal votes. And these illegal immigrants are being protected by Democratic
there was also
politicians.
we always used to hear stories about Diehl. I grew up in Wisconsin.
Well, I mean, this group of illegal immigrants are a pool of voters for Democratic politicians. That's among the reasons why they fight so hard to keep them here against the wishes of the American people.
Here's a random question. Rob Emanuel, also from Chicago, there are stories that he may be interested in running. And in Pritzker, there's stories about Pritzker maybe running. Rahm Emanuel the same as Pritzker?
No, they're different. They're different. They're politically different. Rahm is running more towards a common sense position. He's very crafty and clever, intelligent, and more responsible. Pritzker's gone crazy left, pandering to what has become the mainstream of the Democratic Party. What once was the lunatic fringe of the Democrat Party is now the mainstream of the Democratic Party. Our Nepo baby billionaire Pritzker is pandering to the Bolsheviks. Rahm has common sense and sees an opportunity to move closer to the center.
I'll tell you how we'll know that Chicago is totally insane is if you let the Bears move to Indiana. I mean, that is insane.
Well, Greta, if I was governor, the Bears would never move to Indiana. They'd stay in Chicago. But Pritzker's the governor, and I'm afraid we're going to lose the Bears to Indiana.
If you, I mean, I don't know how Pritzker can look for a vote if he lets those Bears move to Indiana. I mean, look what happened when they moved from Baltimore to Indianapolis, the Colts. Anyway, Governor, always nice to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
He's back. Who am I referring to? Well, former comedian and actor Bill Cosby, and what he's back for is not good. Yesterday, a civil jury in California found Cosby liable for sexual battery and assault of Donna Motzinger in 1972. The jury awarded Motzinger $17.5 million in past damages, $1.75 million in future damages, and the future damages include mental suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, inconvenience, grief, anxiety, humiliation, and emotional distress, and $40 million in punitive damages. That is a whopping total of $59.25 million. After the jury verdict, Cosby's attorney, Jennifer Bongine, said they are disappointed and fully intend to appeal the verdict. This verdict comes almost 5 years after Cosby was freed from prison in Pennsylvania. Cosby was freed when the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court threw out a criminal conviction based on similar allegations. Coming up, she is making an already bad situation even worse. Who is she, and where is this? That when the record continues.
Here's Chris Cunahan with the Leaf Filter Gutter Report.
From blizzards to downpours to windstorms or heat waves, no matter where you live, Leaf Filter keeps your gutters clog-free year-round. Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
48% of Americans aren't getting enough magnesium, which is essential for nerve, bone, and muscle health. I recommend Cunol High Absorption Magnesium Glycinate. It's gentle on the stomach and helps you get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
No way this all fits.
Watch me.
Oh, we're watching, Gary.
They're right. We need WeatherTech.
I thought they only make floor liners and cargo liners.
Really, Gary?
oil again? Who do you think made the seat protector, side window deflectors, no drill mud flaps?
And the cup foam.
And I just ordered WeatherTech's newest products. Ta-da!
Hitch Basket makes for easy loading of heavy and bulky gear and increased storage capacity with a roof basket up top. Buy American at WT.com.
WeatherTech for the win.
Appliances break down, home systems fail, which means I show up at every one store because I'm inevitable.
Unfortunately, something expensive is about to happen.
Is it the heat, plumbing, electrical, wiring, garage door, oven?
But we already have homeowners insurance. Actually, home insurance is for the unexpected disasters. A home warranty is for the everyday wear and tear that will cause your home systems and appliances to fail. So give the people at First American a call.
First American has had my back for years and saved me hundreds. Just one call, and they send a pre-screened, qualified contractor.
Every home system and appliance fails. There's absolutely no avoiding it. But when the day comes, First American has you covered.
Home breakdowns are inevitable, but the expense, that's optional.
Call First American for a free quote that could save you thousands on inevitable home breakdowns. Call 800-714-4212 or visit FAHW.com.
Mother Nature can be so mean. Mother Nature this time just won't let up. She always seems to have one place in her crosshairs, and this time it's Hawaii. And she's not hinting when this will end. Hawaii is still trying to recover from the worst floods the state has seen in 2 decades, but yesterday's new round of heavy rain caused even more flooding. Some parts of the state, including Oahu, saw more than 7 inches of rain. That's just in a span of 24 hours. So where is the state getting some help? Here's what Hawaii Governor Josh Green says.
I formally requested for a presidential major disaster declaration. I have every assurance that they're going to be supportive of us. I received a call that I appreciated so much from Markwayne Mullin, who is, as of this moment, the confirmed Homeland Security Secretary. When you get a call like that and he explains that he's aware of Hawaii, it's helpful to me. When the mayor and I go and do these walkthroughs and see people suffering on the North Shore and knowing that the feds are attentive to what we're going to ask for, it's a positive thing.
In the past 10 days, 40 to 50 inches of rain have fallen on Hawaii. As of now, there are no reported deaths. That's the good news. Hawaii's governor says the cost of damage from the flooding, at least so far, is about $1 billion. Now to the state of Texas, where there was an explosion at an oil refinery. It happened at the Valero refinery in Port Arthur. That's about 90 miles east of Houston. The explosion shot up into the sky, large plumes of smoke. People were told to shelter in place. That shelter-in-place warning, by the way, has since been lifted. Luckily, no one was injured. The sheriff says the explosion was likely caused by an industrial heater. Meanwhile, gas prices keep inching up. This, of course, is due to the war against Iran. So what are the gas prices right now in America? According to AAA, the national average of gas is $3.97 per gallon. That is $1 more per gallon than just 1 month ago. Coming up, with Republicans and Democrats in Washington fighting, do you think that raccoons can bring the government together? Great idea, right? That when the record continues.
Hey, I'm Carl Higby from Newsmax. Look, I'm unapologetically pro-American, and honestly, this is the one place that lets me call it how it is. I'm not holding back. I'll give it to you straight every single night.
Go ahead, crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
I'm putting with Abe Lincoln's cane right now.
These are 40-something years old.
Yeah. There we go. Oh, come on!
I really believe that God put us on a course to take care of all these catastrophic leads of service members, Gold Star widows.
It's because of all of them that we get to do what we do.
Let's do good together.
Let's do it. People got to give every time I miss.
You got to give $11.
There we go. You're the man. Donate $11 a month at T2T.org.
Support your long-term health with Fatty 15, the science-backed, award-winning Pure C15 supplement.
Fatty 15
is reversing aging at the cellular level. And I know it's doing what I want it to do, which is prove longevity and wellness.
Discover more at fatty15.com.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
Forget the warm-up. DirecTV got hot. They're on fire with more MLB games than anyone. Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
How old are you?
11.
Get new floors during Empire Today's gigantic 75% off sale. That's carpet, hardwood, tile, and vinyl. 75% off. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire. The FBI calls it house stealing, the latest scam where a cyber thief transfers the title of your home out of your name and steals your hard-earned equity.
It's roughly 60 to 90 days for that person to even figure out that they're the victim of this crime. You start getting foreclosure notices, and you realize you've got 4 mortgages on your house that you didn't even know existed.
Unfortunately, it's on you to protect yourself. You might already be a victim. Check your title status now at HomeTitleLock.com.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Sponsored by Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, the health of fresh food with the convenience of kibble. Visit drmartypets.com/TV.
A hot topic is up for debate in Tennessee. A new law would allow residents to have a particular type of pet.
This bill came from a constituent of mine that had a desire to possess a raccoon. And it started out allowing someone to possess a wild raccoon, but we determined that was not going to be feasible. So what the bill does, it allows someone to possess a raccoon that they have obtained from a breeder, not a wild raccoon.
Yes, you heard correctly. Residents want raccoons as pets. The bill in Tennessee, if passed, would allow residents to own raccoons without a fee, but there are limits. People cannot catch their pet raccoon from the wild. The raccoon is to come from a legal source, like a breeder. And yesterday, the state Senate unanimously passed the bill. The measure now goes to the State House for another vote. As an aside, in the 3rd grade, my family had a pet raccoon. His name was Ringo. My mother, though, made us get rid of Ringo when he killed my guinea pig. Let's just say it was a very bad time in our house that day. Thanks for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is up next. Stay with Newsmax.